BlackRock just lit a fuse, and most people still haven't noticed. This isn't another bullish tweet. This isn't ETF speculation. This is the world's largest asset manager, with over $10 trillion under control, officially validating everything Ripple and Stellar have been building behind the scenes for years. This changes the game, because when BlackRock talks, the global financial system listens. And what they're saying now isn't about Bitcoin dominance or Ethereum staking rewards. It's about tokenized money, real-time asset settlement, and a completely re-engineered financial infrastructure. One where XRP and XLM are suddenly positioned not as altcoins, but as core components. Let that sink in. Ripple and Stellar, two protocols mocked by crypto purists and ignored by casual investors, are now aligned with BlackRock's vision for the future of money. That's not hype. That's strategy. They're not promoting speculation. They're endorsing infrastructure. And guess who already built that infrastructure? Ripple's XRP ledger, with its blazing fast settlement and liquidity solutions for banks, remittances, and tokenized assets. Stellar's global payment rails, already used by MoneyGram, the UN, and cross-border institutions to move value in real time. So when BlackRock's Larry Fink says, tokenization is the next evolution of markets, he's not making a prediction. He's describing a future that Ripple and Stellar already operationalized. And here's where it gets real. This isn't just a wake-up call for the financial sector. It's a direct warning shot to anyone still sleeping on XRP and XLM. Because while retail is distracted by meme coins, Wall Street is preparing for a historic rotation. From speculation to utility, from volatility to volume. And BlackRock is making sure they control the pipes through which that volume flows. Let me be brutally clear. This is the moment we've been waiting for. This is the shift from hype cycles to infrastructure dominance. And if you're holding XRP or XLM, what just happened might be the single most important inflection point in their entire history. And if you're not holding them yet, this is your final boarding call. The world's biggest institutions are not guessing anymore. They're executing. They're moving capital. They're building around compliant, scalable, and regulated protocols, which just happen to be XRP and XLM. This isn't a test run. This is the first domino in a global financial overhaul. The alarm has been sounded. If you're watching closely, you'll see the blueprint unfolding in real time. Smash that subscribe button if you refuse to be blindsided by institutional moves the way the masses always are. This channel is your front row seat to the biggest financial pivot of the decade. Now let's break down exactly what BlackRock just said, and why XRP and XLM are finally stepping into the spotlight they were built for. Larry Fink just ripped the mask off. For months, the CEO of BlackRock, the most powerful asset manager on earth, has been dropping subtle hints about digital assets, tokenization, and the future of finance. But now, there's no ambiguity left. This wasn't a casual comment buried in a podcast or some vague prediction at a conference. This was a full-blown strategic declaration. The financial system is being rebuilt from the ground up, and tokenization is the foundation. But here's what 90% of crypto still doesn't understand. This isn't about Bitcoin. This isn't about Ethereum gas fees. And it sure as hell isn't about NFTs or meme coins. BlackRock is talking about real-world assets, moved and settled on blockchain rails with near-zero friction, full transparency, and instant interoperability. Tokenized treasuries, tokenized currencies, instantaneous global money movement. This isn't the future anymore. This is what BlackRock is actively planning for and quietly positioning into. Now ask yourself, who already built the rails for that? Who has been working with central banks, remittance giants, and regulators for nearly a decade? Who created a framework not for speculation, but for settlement, liquidity, and real-world financial flows? The answer is two names that most of crypto ignored until now: Ripple, XRP, and Stellar, XLM. Let's break this down. Tokenization eliminates settlement friction. He's talking about the inefficiencies of the legacy system, T+2 settlements, correspondent banking delays, FX spread leakage. Ripple's on-demand liquidity already fixes this. Stellar's instant USDC rail through MoneyGram does the same. These aren't concepts. They're live. Cross-border flows demand real-time interoperability. That's the killer feature. Not just speed, but global, multi-asset interoperability. XRP and XLM are natively built for this. Both can settle value across any currency pair in seconds without needing traditional correspondent banking. That's exactly what BlackRock wants to plug into. Blockchains must integrate with existing financial systems, not replace them. And here's where Ripple and Stellar absolutely shine. They never tried to overthrow the system. They engineered systems that work with banks, regulators, and fiat currencies, not against them. BlackRock doesn't want DeFi chaos, they want regulated, plug-and-play token rails. That's what XRP Ledger and Stellar Network provide. Now zoom out. RippleNet is already integrated with financial giants across Asia, LATAM, and the Middle East. Banks like SBI, PNC, Tranglo, and Santander aren't experimenting. They're actively transacting on Ripple's rails. And they're using XRP for liquidity in corridors where traditional FX is too slow or too expensive. Stellar, meanwhile, has quietly gone from a remittance experiment to a global value transfer protocol, working hand-in-hand with MoneyGram, Circle, and even the United Nations. You can now move USDC across borders into cash with a mobile phone, and Stellar is the plumbing underneath. That's not theory. That's functional tokenized finance. And BlackRock is now pointing directly at it. Wall Street doesn't chase hype. It builds infrastructure and locks in monopoly control. So when BlackRock openly says that tokenization is the next evolution of markets, they're not making a prediction for 5 years from now. They're telegraphing their next move. And here's what that move looks like. Tokenized U.S. Treasuries traded on-chain. Instant redemption and settlement via stablecoins. FX liquidity handled in real time with assets like XRP and XLM. Global 24/7 money markets that settle in seconds, not days. That's not possible on Bitcoin. That's not Ethereum's niche anymore. But Ripple and Stellar? They're literally built for this. So let's call it what it is. BlackRock just validated Ripple and Stellar's decade-long strategy. They didn't say the names out loud. They don't have to. The features they described, the systems they want, the outcomes they need already exist, and XRP and XLM are powering them. This wasn't just a bullish announcement. This was a directional signal to the entire traditional finance sector. The rails of the future are already operational, and the race to integrate them is on. The institutions are no longer asking if. They're asking, who can we work with today? And the answer is clearer than ever, Ripple and Stellar. XRP and XLM. Let's cut through the noise. BlackRock doesn't experiment. It dominates. It doesn't waste time building infrastructure. It partners with those who already have it, scales it globally, and monetizes it at a level nobody else can. So when BlackRock steps up and starts outlining their vision for a tokenized, real-time global financial network, don't think for a second that they're going to start coding smart contracts or reinventing payment rails from scratch. They're looking for one thing: infrastructure that's live, compliant, scalable, and ready for trillions of dollars to flow through. That narrows the list dramatically. And if you've been paying attention, you already know who checks every box. Ripple and Stellar. What BlackRock wants equals what Ripple and Stellar already built. Let's look at what BlackRock is specifically targeting. Tokenized U.S. Treasuries that can be traded 24/7, globally. Cross-border settlement in real time, without relying on archaic SWIFT infrastructure. Regulated blockchain environments that won't trigger compliance red flags. Sound familiar? Because Ripple and Stellar have been building exactly this architecture, quietly, methodically, and in direct collaboration with banks, regulators, NGOs, and FX corridors for over a decade. They didn't hype it. They built it. And now, BlackRock is effectively saying, that's the system we need. Ripple's positioning built for institutional scale. Ripple isn't a startup anymore. It's an enterprise-grade liquidity network that's already powering real payments in corridors where traditional finance can't compete. Here's what Ripple brings to BlackRock's table. ODL, on-demand liquidity. XRP is used as a neutral bridge asset to facilitate instant settlements between currencies, slashing the need for nostro-vostro accounts and freeing up billions in locked capital. Banking infrastructure. Ripple has partnerships with over 300 financial institutions, including major players across the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. That's the exact global footprint BlackRock needs to tokenize multi-market debt and equity flows. Real-world tokenization. Ripple is now expanding into tokenized real estate, carbon credit markets, and central bank stablecoin pilots, all of which align with BlackRock's ESG and long-duration investment strategies. Medico acquisition. This is the silent game-changer. Ripple acquired Medico, a Swiss-based institutional custody platform, used by some of the largest banks and asset managers in Europe. If BlackRock is looking for secure, enterprise-grade digital asset custody, Medico's integration into Ripple gives them the perfect on-ramp. Ripple's strategy is simple. Become the default infrastructure for regulated tokenized liquidity. And it's working. Stellar's silent climb, the infrastructure nobody saw coming. While Ripple's been taking headlines for legal battles and big-name partnerships, Stellar has been playing a calculated, long-term game, focusing on global access, regulatory trust, and building through utility instead of noise. Here's what Stellar is doing under the radar. USDC cross-border transfers. Through its deep integration with MoneyGram, Stellar allows users in dozens of countries to send and receive stablecoins directly into fiat cash. This is game-changing for underbanked regions, and exactly the kind of infrastructure that BlackRock's global bond initiatives could ride on. Soroban smart contracts. Launched with a laser focus on regulated DeFi, Stellar Soroban isn't about casinos or dog coins. It's about programmable financial tools with enterprise use cases, from insurance to automated trade finance. This opens the door for compliant fund management, programmable treasuries, and cross-border settlement logic that BlackRock could use immediately. UNHCR partnership. Stellar's tech is literally being used by the United Nations to deliver digital aid into crisis zones. That's not a pilot, it's a deployed, functioning system. The message? Stellar can handle sensitive, regulated capital flows on-chain without risking compliance. CBDC interoperability pilots. Stellar is working on direct interoperability between CBDCs and public chains. That's critical for BlackRock if they want to offer tokenized sovereign debt or facilitate instant FX trades across central bank digital currencies. The missing link: Circle, USDC, and BlackRock. Now let's connect the dots. BlackRock already holds a significant investment stake in Circle, the issuer of USDC, the most regulated and institutionally trusted stablecoin in the world. And where does USDC run natively? Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, and Stellar. In fact, Stellar was one of the first public blockchains to integrate native USDC at scale, and it continues to be the most efficient and cash-friendly network for deploying USDC into the real economy. It's the blockchain that bridges USDC into actual fiat in developing countries. So when BlackRock says they want tokenized cash equivalents and instant access to dollar liquidity, you better believe USDC on Stellar is a critical part of that roadmap. They don't need to build. They don't need to experiment. They just need to plug in. Why BlackRock's not saying the quiet part out loud? Look, BlackRock's not going to come out and say, "We're using Ripple," or "We're integrating Stellar." They don't need to. That's not how institutions operate. What they do is lay out the features, requirements, and market direction, and then they invest, partner, or acquire their way into it quietly. So when BlackRock says, "We need real-time tokenized treasuries, interoperable payment rails, regulatory-grade blockchains," they're describing a system that already exists today. A system Ripple and Stellar spent the last decade building. This isn't just a possibility, it's a direct match. BlackRock doesn't need a white paper. They need rails. And Ripple and Stellar are the only two protocols in crypto right now that can provide those rails at scale, with the compliance Wall Street demands. Bottom line? BlackRock isn't coming to crypto for speculation. They're coming to take control of the tokenized economy. And they're going to do it by plugging into existing infrastructure that works. That infrastructure? Ripple, Stellar, XRP, XLM. Whether or not they say it out loud, that's the future they're signaling. And smart money is paying attention. The global liquidity shift, and XRP/XLM's role. Here's where things get even more serious. BlackRock isn't operating in isolation. There's a coordinated shift happening, from swift to real-time tokenized liquidity. And Ripple and Stellar are leading the charge. Central banks are already testing the waters. Hong Kong, Singapore, and Switzerland are exploring XRP/XLM compatible systems. The Bank of England and Digital Pound Foundation have acknowledged Ripple's involvement. Stellar is already embedded in Ukraine's CBDC pilot. IMF and World Bank documents repeatedly mention interoperable tokenized ledgers. And this isn't just theory. Ripple recently announced trials with over 30 institutions exploring real-world asset tokenization, including real estate, treasuries, and FX. Stellar, on the other hand, is pioneering on-chain trade finance through partners like Palago, bridging real SMEs to DeFi. Now factor in BlackRock's multi-trillion-dollar AUM. If even a fraction of that liquidity starts routing through Ripple and Stellar infrastructure, you're talking about volume surges that dwarf anything we've seen, and XRP/XLM are native assets of those systems. That's the kind of inflow that melts resistance levels on the chart. Compliance, custody, and the rise of institutional DeFi. Institutions don't ape into yield farms. They require custody compliance, regulatory clarity, real-world returns. Guess which projects are building exactly that? Ripple. SEC lawsuit nearly done. Regulatory clarity inbound. Acquired Medico for institutional custody. Partnered with the Republic of Palau to pilot a national stablecoin. Built XRP ledger upgrades for tokenized real estate and carbon markets. Stellar. Upgraded with Soroban smart contracts. Optimized for compliance. Working with DFS Lab and DFS Africa on regulated DeFi use cases. Backed USDC integration with major FX rails. Now combine that with what BlackRock wants. Tokenized treasuries. On-chain cash equivalents. Seamless cross-border liquidity. This isn't Ethereum territory anymore. It's Ripple and Stellar because they're actually working with governments and institutions, not trying to fight them. BlackRock needs regulated on-chain infrastructure. XRP and XLM deliver exactly that, with compliance-first architecture already tested at scale. What happens next? And why retail isn't ready? Here's the real kicker. While retail keeps chasing meme coins and NFTs, institutions are positioning quietly. That's why this BlackRock signal is so important. It means the slow phase is over. We're now entering institutional rollouts, tokenized fund distribution, real-time CBDC interoperability, and Ripple and Stellar are on the short list of compliant, scalable, and efficient platforms that can handle that level of volume. We're not waiting for use cases. They're already live. We're not speculating on partnerships. They're already signed. And now, with BlackRock publicly declaring their interest in tokenized infrastructure, the timeline just accelerated. But here's the twist. Most retail investors won't see it coming. XRP is still underpriced relative to utility. XLM is still being dismissed as dead. Right before institutional demand ramps up. Wallet activity is surging quietly. On-chain volumes are up double digits. Smart contracts on Stellar are now live with working dApps. By the time mainstream media catches on, the accumulation window will be gone. BlackRock's message is loud and clear. BlackRock doesn't need to say, "We're using Ripple," or "We're investing in Stellar." They just have to say, "We believe in tokenized real-world assets." Everything else is implied because the rails are already there. Ripple and Stellar built the infrastructure years ago. Now the world's largest asset manager is admitting, "We need it." If you're still waiting for a signal, this is it. The alarm has been sounded. The shift is happening. And XRP and XLM are no longer speculative bets. They're the foundational plumbing of a new global financial system. Don't sleep on this moment. Subscribe to Be Crypto Smart for deep dives you won't get from the mainstream. Drop a comment. Do you think BlackRock will partner directly with Ripple or Stellar? Share this video if you know someone still sleeping on XRP and XLM. This is bigger than price action. This is about positioning before the institutions fully deploy. Let's stay 10 steps ahead.